My name is Christina Lankowski, and I'm a podcast strategist and publicist, and I own an agency called Publicity by Christina. I was born in Portland, Oregon in 1982 to my wonderful parents, Mark and Mary Stewart, and I was raised right outside Portland until I was about 3 years old when we moved to Maryland. We moved right between DC and Baltimore, and my dad taught at the University of Maryland there for I think about 8 or 9 years. My sister was born there, and then we moved back to Oregon. So Oregon to me is home. I got a tattoo and everything to prove it, but that is the place that I consider where I grew up and kind of what shaped me. But with that being said, there's a huge part of that Maryland time that was a lot of fun for me. My dad's a huge history buff. He's an expert on the war in the Pacific during World War II. And so we went to a ton of sites, and the Smithsonian, my parents did a lot of taking us to all the cultural events that they possibly could. I think a huge thing that growing up with this love of history that I was instilled in with my dad gave me is the want to make our stories known. I find the personal insights into these real life events what's incredibly interesting, and especially as we live through hard times like we're living through now, we want to hear, or I want to hear, people's real stories, the authentic things that are happening, the thoughts that they're having, etc. And I do think that knowledge that my dad specifically gave me is something that served me really well in the career that I have now. When I describe what I do, people are usually like, that exists? That is a lot of times the feedback that I get. They don't know that what I do is an actual job, or the agency that I run, that people do that. I think they tend to think that people just kind of stumble onto podcasts, or they haven't thought about how their favorite host has brought on a guest and the process on the back end to make that happen. They just liked a guest that was on, or they enjoyed what they had to say, or something like that. So when they hear that what I do is connect those hosts with those guests, if it's the right fit, they're usually very intrigued by it. But it's one of those jobs, like I like to say, it's like a winemaker, where people think it's super sexy. Like they're like, wow, that's like amazing. And I'm like, I mean, really, I'm just emailing a lot, but it is a fun job. And I do love that at the end of the day, my clients' voices are getting out there in front of the people that really want to hear from them. So I got into this line of work over 20 years ago at this point. I went to Oregon State University, where my whole family goes. We are all proud Oregon State Beavers. And after that, I traveled for a year around the world, bartended in Ireland, lived in Mexico, etc. Came back home and was offered 2 jobs. And one of them was a copy editor at a newspaper in Central Oregon, and the other one was in the PR department at Dark Horse Comics, right outside of my hometown of Portland. And I decided to go into PR, which is something my mom was a breadwinner growing up, so I have a very interesting story with that. But she always thought I would go into PR. She always thought I'd go into public relations. I was a writer, but I'm very outgoing. And so she thought that PR would definitely be a route for me. And I was always like, Mom, you don't get me. Like, you don't know me, and stuff. And then I did go into PR, and I was like, oh yes, this is actually a really good fit for me. And so my journey at Dark Horse, or starting there, was really what began that PR journey for me. And so I've been doing this in various ways, like in-house and for agencies, for a really long time now. I went off on my own in 2015 after I had my daughter, and I had been a senior account executive at a PR agency in my town where I live, Boise, Idaho, and we tried to make it work part-time, but it just didn't work to be doing that job part-time. And so I decided that I was going to go off on my own, that I was going to kind of found my own agency, etc. And what I found was I kind of followed the directions that everybody else was giving me in how to be promoting my business, as opposed to leaning into my own intuition and the skills that I already had. And so when I went to launch the first course that I ever did, I just followed the game plan. They were just like, at that point, it was, you pay for ads, they go to a webinar, which then goes to email sales. You never have to talk to anybody. You never have to be doing everything. And as a busy mom, I was like, great, this is perfect. I'm obviously going to make $1 million in my sleep. Like, let's go. But when it came to actually launching and actually getting my course out there, there were very little sales. And I remember at the time my partner was like, so what are we doing here? And I was like, shh, you don't know me. Like, give me a minute, or whatever. But I decided to tap back into my intuition at that point and realize you're teaching a course on publicity, so why don't you do some publicity? Why don't you go do some PR? And so I did that. I started pitching myself to podcasts, and this was 2018. So podcasts were a thing, but they weren't the thing that they are today, where they're such an integral part of basically everybody's life. And so I started to get on podcasts that were full of my ideal audience, and my business just did a 180. People were reaching out to me directly to work with me, to hire me, buying my course right off the shelf. There was no long nurture sequence or webinar needed or anything like that. They were just ready to go. That know, like, and trust factor had been upped so dramatically. And so when the pandemic hit, my previous work that I've been doing was in tourism PR. And so I saw very quickly the writing on the wall that there was not going to be the funds for that tourism world to kind of continue at the same pace and the same budgets that they had been at before. And I'd already had a little bit of an inkling to start teaching people how to book themselves on podcasts, particularly women entrepreneurs. And so I just leaned in and started to give some trainings and teach people how to do that. But by the end of that year, I had so many people that were like, yes, but could you do it for me? That I was like, okay. It took me a while, I will say. I had kind of thought, I don't want to get into being a service provider. I don't necessarily want to be starting an agency. After working at agencies for so long, I kind of had, my thoughts around how it had to be. And finally, though, I realized that I could do it in the way that I wanted to do it, in a way that felt really authentic to me. And so at the end of 2020, I started the agency I have now, and have grown it to the work we've done, getting our clients on. We're almost at 1,000 podcasts, which is really, really exciting, and millions of people that have heard our clients on some amazing podcasts that are out there in the world. I grew up in a fairly conservative household, but one thing that was very, very interesting about the household I grew up in is that my mom, kind of out of necessity, became the breadwinner in our family. And my dad was very, very involved in our life. Like, one thing that I always say to people is I have a very healthy relationship with my dad and with men in general, because I just grew up with one that was very nurturing towards me and my sister, and really took care of us and made sure we had what we, whatever we needed and the support we needed. I grew up in a very loving household environment from both my parents. But one thing that I know was always a big thing in my family was that my mom was the breadwinner. And I know that that had its own issues, that came along with that. But the one thing that I always saw growing up was just how she could do it all. And I think that that was pretty amazing to me to see, was that I had a mom who was really involved in my life and was always there for me, but also worked full time and ended up being the director of a large nonprofit in Oregon. And both me and my sister have amazing work ethics because of this. And we also know that we can have that family life and have our business life as well. And so I think it's been a really important thing to see growing up. She's now retired, living the good retired life, traveling and all that type of stuff. But I really do think that having that environment growing up really allowed us to see that this was possible, and that you could have everything that you were really looking for. I think that one of the biggest struggles that I've had in my business is just the changing environment over the years. Podcasts experienced explosive growth 2020, 2021, and 2022 as people really discovered them during the pandemic. I do think that there were a lot of us, like myself, that were locked up with our families, in our house, and we just wanted to hear anyone else's voice. You know what I mean? We were just at a certain point where we were like, I need to just get away from y'all and listen to other people and hear other people's opinions on a wide variety of topics, right? It didn't necessarily have to be on the same thing. But I wanted to learn about other things. I wanted to hear other people's perspectives because I was pretty tired of hearing from my partner and my child, 24/7 about everything. And so I think a lot of people experienced that. And so there was this huge surge in interest in podcasts in that time period. And while they are still growing, I think in a lot of people's minds, that time has passed, right? They tend to think that, oh, it's already had its moment. Podcasts have had their moment. So why do I still need to be getting on podcasts, right? Or why do I need to be investing to have you as an agency get me booked on podcasts? But the fact of the matter is our clients still are seeing huge returns, ROI on the work that they're doing because people do still listen to podcasts. And so I think that this is it's been a huge struggle for me to kind of get across to people that this is still a very valid media outlet. So podcasts are still continuing to show an amazing ROI for our clients. We just are very strategic about that work. And that's the big thing I really like to talk to people about is it's not just you getting in front of the biggest podcasts, it's you getting in front of the right people that are there to hear your message and that are going to become clients, customers, followers of you, whatever makes the most sense for your particular business. So I think that that's kind of been one of the bigger struggles over the past 5 years of having this business is just seeing the kind of popularity burst and then seeing people's perception shift on a particular medium. People have very real thoughts and concerns about the fact that maybe they don't listen as much to podcasts, and so is this still a real format for them? They usually still listen to some, but they may not listen to the large amount that they were listening to a couple years ago. And I really think that that's very true. I think people have found their specific ones that they are extremely loyal to. They love that host, right? And that's who they really want to be listening into week in and week out. So while I don't think the average used to be that Americans were listening to 8 shows a week, my guess is that it's more closer to 4 nowadays, like some people 3, some 5, right? Kind of depending. But I think the stats will show you that that loyalty to those hosts has gone up even more. So it used to be around, I think it was something like 60% of listeners felt a personal connection to the hosts whose podcast they listen to regularly. And I would really dare to say that it would be more like 70 to 80% now. And I've seen that at events I go to. So for instance, next week I'm going to Podcast Movement in Chicago. And when I'm there, I'll meet all kinds of hosts and stuff. And I feel like I know them. I think back to when I was at the last Podcast Movement last year, there was the host of Dark Down East, which is one of my favorite true crime podcasts. And she was speaking at the event. And when I met her, I just nerded out. Like I was like, oh, we need a photo and I need to do all this and that. And I was like, remember how you were talking about how you and your husband went to whatever? Like I really felt like I knew this person. And I think that's how a lot of people feel about podcasts. So it may not be that they listen to as many, but the ones that they listen to, they are really, really invested in what it is that that host is saying. So I'm going to Podcast Movement in Chicago, and I'm really excited to meet some of the hosts there. And it's interesting to see how the crowd interacts with the hosts, myself included. So in the middle of our recording just now, one of my devices went off to say, hey, you're too far away from your phone, right? It was saying we can't read the reading on your continuous glucose monitor, which is a type 1 diabetic, is what's constantly telling me, at least generally, where my blood sugars are at. Being a business owner as a type 1 diabetic is a different kind of strength for sure. There are days where I feel horrible. I have maybe had a night of incredible highs or lows or both, just in a fun twist of things, which makes you really tired, can make you irritable, etc. But I know that there are certain things that I have to be able to push through and do. And I also think that having a chronic illness like type 1 diabetes makes me realize how short life is and makes me realize how much I do need to make out of each day, because I truly don't know when could be the last. So as a mother of a child with special needs, I also am always thinking about what the future holds. And one of the things that I really love about being an entrepreneur is that I have the ability to show my daughter that business can look how you want it to look, and also be able to give her the financial freedom so that she can be living the life that she wants to live. My daughter, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she has autism, ADHD, and developmental delays. And so we'll always need support in her life in one way or another. And I want to make sure that she has as much freedom as possible in those choices so that she can lead a happy, safe, fulfilled life. We have a client named Danielle who runs a large tax and accounting firm. So she's a service provider. She has an agency of service providers. She actually does my taxes as well. I'm one of her clients now because after working with her, I was able to hear just how amazing she was with the advice she was giving to the entrepreneurs she was working with. And she has seen incredible success working with us because one really great thing about Danielle and one thing she understands is that she's not trying to get on the biggest shows. She is trying to get on shows where she knows her ideal client is hanging out. So for her in particular, she really loves to work with people that own salons and people that have med spas, people that maybe have wedding related businesses, photographers, etc. That doesn't mean that's all she works with, but that is a particular area of interest for her as she was a hairdresser before she became a corporate accountant. And so she shows up on these shows. They've never heard from someone that really focuses on taxes or money saving tips for their specific industry. That know, like, and trust factor is just built dramatically, and the discovery calls start rolling in. She has seen an amazing 5x ROI working with us. She's now in the middle of her second year working with us and has also done some other work with us as well, because she sees the incredible impact that getting on podcasts and talking really specifically with her ideal audiences has done for her, because she's focused on the right ROI. She's not just focused on the size, she's really focused on that correct audience. I met Arlan at Rachel Rogers' ROI event in Puerto Rico and instantly just really liked her vibe a lot. I go a lot on gut. And so when I meet someone that I really feel like is very authentic, that's someone that I really want to learn from. Then I read her book, and then I learned about her event that she had coming up, Your First Million. And so I signed up for that event as a VIP attendee, and it was awesome. Not only did I get to see TLC front row, I also got to learn from some amazing entrepreneurs that were out there. One thing that I always like to say, or that I talk about when people ask me why I'm really interested in learning from Arlan, is I live in Boise, Idaho. I live in a very white area of our country. And so the people that I have to learn from there all look like me, all kind of have the same business ideas, et cetera. And so I really love to invest and learn from people that have different perspectives than I do on my business or on my life, et cetera. One of the greatest things about entrepreneurs is the self-improvement and the self-learning that we get to do regularly. And being a part of Arlan's world is a huge part of that learning juncture for me. And so when she announced the Inner Circle at the event, or when I learned about the Inner Circle at the event, I knew that I had to be a part of it. I learned so much from her and her team. One of the things that Arlan does that I find so impressive and that I talk about all the time is the ability to text her and ask her questions. I don't know any other mastermind leader or any kind of thought leader, like especially at her level, that offers that kind of access to the people that are in her world. And so to me, I've learned a lot of how to be more open to the people that learn from me, to share more of that, where I feel like I was very closed off before. I felt very much like, no, you have to only talk to me in these specific times. This is the way that you can get a hold of me, et cetera. And so that's really been a different way for me to look at how I run my business. I think my assignment in life is to get people's voices out into the world who may feel like they don't have a place to do that or feel safe in doing that. We talked about this at the beginning, but I grew up in a very loving household. I grew up in an environment where my voice it mattered, and it was safe to be able to say what my opinion was and what my thoughts were. And my parents have evolved along the journey with me into the people that we have become today, which may look a lot different than the views and the thoughts they had back from the 80s, you know. And so I think that they've given me this gift of always being open to evolve. And I think that is my assignment in this world, is to help other people realize that they can evolve and they can use their voice as a huge part of that as well. I have been given so many things in this world, having a chronic illness, having a daughter with special needs, that have opened me up to entirely different universes that I didn't even know existed before. And so to be able to give voice to those is something that I do not take for granted, and I do believe is my assignment in this world. My partner, Brian, is a true partner. He walks side by side with me. He supports me a lot in both my business, in my waking up at 3 a.m. needing to slam an orange juice because I'm having a low blood sugar, and also in taking care of our child. I'm here in this studio. He is the one that's taking care of everything for the next many days while I'm on work trips. And I think that one thing that's very important about our relationship is ethically we are very similar. We may not have the same views on every single thing. We may look at things differently. He's an engineer. He's very logic-based. I am very more like on the vibe of things, etc. But we both know what we believe is right and what we believe is wrong. And we have very similar views on those things. And so I love to be able to see him in his work as a director at a major tech company, bring on more women, bring on more people of color, bring on these things because he knows those things are important. So being able to also respect what he's doing in this world and have him respect what I'm doing in this world, I think is huge.